You. The help. The voice, slick with old money and condescension, cut through the low hum of the upscale restaurant. It belonged to Alistair Vance, a real estate tycoon known as much for his cruelty as his wealth. He was holding court at his usual, obscenely expensive corner table, surrounded by sycophantic associates. "The manager tells me you used to play. Entertain us." Ilara stopped mid-pour, the crystal carafe of mineral water trembling slightly in her hand. She kept her eyes down, on the pristine white tablecloth. "I'm working, sir. Perhaps another time." "I'm making it your work," Vance said, a cold smile in his voice. He snapped his fingers, the sound like a gunshot in the refined atmosphere. "Consider it part of your service. I insist. Show us what you, people, can do with a little culture." The thinly veiled racism hung in the air, thick and foul. His friends tittered nervously, their eyes darting between the powerful man and the silent waitress. Ilara's manager, a perpetually sweating man named Robert, materialized at her elbow, his face pale. "Ilara, please. Just a short piece. Don't make a scene," he whispered, his voice pleading. A scene. She would be making a scene. Not the billionaire mocking her in front of a dining room full of people. The injustice of it was a hot coal in her chest. But she also needed this job. The medical bills for her mother didn't pay themselves. With a quiet sigh that felt like the surrender of her very soul, she nodded. She placed the carafe down and walked, back straight, towards the grand piano that sat on a small dais, a decorative relic mostly ignored by the patrons. As she walked, the memories flooded her. Not of this place, with its judgmental stares and the smell of privilege, but of a small, warm living room in her childhood home. The scent of her grandmother's perfume, the feel of her guiding hands over Ilara's smaller ones on the keys of their old upright piano. Her grandmother, a renowned Juilliard professor who had taught the finest musicians of her generation, had poured a lifetime of knowledge and love into her only granddaughter. The piano wasn't an instrument of entertainment. It was her heritage, her sanctuary. She reached the piano. Alistair Vance leaned back in his chair, a smirk of anticipation on his face. He was waiting for a stumble, for a clumsy chopsticks melody, for the confirmation of his ugly prejudice. He was ready to laugh. Ilara slowly lowered herself onto the polished bench. She ignored the audience, closed her eyes, and let her fingers hover over the keys. For a moment, there was only silence, a vacuum of expectation punctuated by Vance's condescending chuckle. Then, she began. The first notes were soft, tentative almost. A gentle, melancholic melody from Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was beautiful, competent. Vance's smirk didn't fade. It was what he expected from someone with a little lessons. But Ilara was just warming up. The simple melody began to evolve. Her hands, which moments before had been carrying heavy trays, now seemed to float. The left hand built a complex rhythmic foundation while the right hand took flight, weaving intricate arpeggios and powerful chords that filled the vast room. The gentle nocturne transformed, building in passion and intensity until it exploded into a breathtaking rendition of Liszt's La Campanella. It was a piece of legendary difficulty, a whirlwind of leaps, trills, and breathtaking speed that separated the amateurs from the masters. The notes weren't just played, they were unleashed, a torrent of musical genius that cascaded from the piano. The entire restaurant had fallen utterly silent. Forks hung in mid-air. Conversations died, unborn. Every single person was transfixed. The busboys in the doorway, the sommelier by the wine cellar, the patrons, all were frozen, captivated by the sheer, undeniable power flowing from the woman in the waitress uniform. Ilara was no longer in the gilded cage. She was in her grandmother's living room. She was on the stage at Carnegie Hall, where she had once won a national competition as a teenager. She was pouring every ounce of her frustration, her pain, her pride, and her legacy into the music. It was a story of struggle and triumph, of silence and voice, all told without a single word. Tears welled in the eyes of an elderly woman at a nearby table. A young couple held hands, gripping tightly at the emotional force of the performance. And Alistair Vance? The smirk had vaporized. His mouth was slightly agape. His glass of 50-year-old scotch sat forgotten, the ice melting into a diluted amber. The arrogance in his eyes had been completely erased, replaced first by shock, then by dawning understanding, and finally by a profound and crushing shame. He had tried to humiliate her, to reduce her to a party trick. Instead, he had unwittingly provided the stage for her to reveal a majesty he could never hope to possess. His wealth, his power, it all seemed garish and cheap next to this raw, exquisite talent. He had wanted to see what her people could do, and she had shown him a genius that transcended race, class, and his own pitiful imagination. As Ilara played the final, magnificent chords, the last note hung in the air, vibrating with the weight of what had just transpired. For a second, there was pure silence. Then, the restaurant erupted. It wasn't just applause, it was a thunderous ovation. People rose to their feet, their cheers echoing off the high ceilings. They weren't applauding out of politeness, but out of sheer, overwhelming awe. Ilara opened her eyes, blinking as if waking from a dream. The sound brought her back to the present. She saw the standing ovation, the tear-streaked faces. She saw her manager, Robert, staring with his mouth wide open. And she saw Alistair Vance. He was still seated, a statue of disgrace. He couldn't meet her eyes. As the applause continued to rain down around him, he finally looked up, and in that fleeting glance, she saw it all: an apology, a humiliation, and a respect that had been brutally earned. Without a word, Ilara stood up from the piano. She gave a small, graceful nod to the room, not a bow of a performer, but an acknowledgement of their appreciation. Then, she walked straight past Vance's table, past her stunned manager, and into the back hallway. She didn't stop at the lockers. She kept walking, straight out the staff entrance into the cool night air. She knew she probably just lost her job. But as she breathed in the free air, the echo of the music still thrumming in her veins, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: the unshakable certainty of her own worth. She had traded a job for her dignity, and the silence she left behind was more powerful than any applause. Alistair Vance had forced a waitress to play, but he had been utterly destroyed by the artist she truly was. Don't judge a book by its cover. The waitress's uniform hid a world of incredible talent. Arrogance leads to humiliation. The rich man's attempt to mock her backfired completely when her skill exposed his own ignorance and prejudice. Your worth is not determined by your job. Ilara was a waitress out of necessity, but her identity and genius were so much more. True power isn't wealth or status. It is talent, character, and self-respect. The rich man had money, but the waitress had a gift that commanded genuine respect and left him speechless with shame.